I am Trevor Babb with the Contemporary Guitar Blog, and I have two special guests today, the co-directors of the 21st Century Guitar Conference, Rita Torres, joining me from Portugal, and Amy Brandon, joining me from Canada. Thank you both for being here today and talking about this very exciting conference that was originally slated to take place in November in Lisbon, and has since been postponed due to the pandemic and pushed online. But we're very excited to be here today with both of you to talk about this. So thanks for being on.
Thank you, Trevor, for the invitation.
Yes. So the focus of this conference is talking about unconventional approaches to guitar, whether that be performance, composition, instruction, research, across the board. So my first question to both of you is, are we surprised? Is there anything new under the sun? Or are we just like seeing all this stuff that's already been figured out? What about this unconventional approach to whatever it is has actually been a surprise to us? Who's doing some of the most exciting stuff in guitar that we're actually going to see presented at this conference?
Well, I think I'll just jump in and say some of the more surprising or fascinating lectures that I came across in looking through all the applications were technological. So of course, there's been so much technological advancement in the last few years. So some of the lectures that I'm particularly interested in hearing are the ones dealing with virtual reality and the guitar. And also there's been a number of innovations for performance as well, such as augmented guitar picks, and also different ways of amplifying instruments. And just there's been seems like quite a surge of technical possibilities, technological possibilities, which just will expand both the artistic and research aspects of the guitar.
Very cool. Talk a little bit more about augmented guitar picks. What are we dealing with there?
So there's a lecturer from New Zealand, Fabio Moriale, and so his work is in basically a guitar pick that I won't explain on his behalf because I don't think I will be able to as well as he can, but it's magnetized, and so that it allows for different control aspects from the guitar pick. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So we're going to hear a lot of strange sounds. Yes. Wonderful, beautiful, strange sounds as part of this conference. Rita, talk a little bit more about kind of the scientific and research aspect of things. What were some of the more surprising proposals that you found in searching through everything that came through in the call to papers on that?
Well, it's difficult to answer. I can start maybe by telling you actually numbers. So we have actually 55, if no one gives up, it's 55 scientific presentations. This includes 2 keynotes, 2 guest lectures, 16 lecture recitals, 9 poster presentations, and 26 regular lectures. We have different themes: composition, creative processes, extended techniques, electronics. Yeah, you can check the website. We have put already everything there. We have also lectures on collaboration. It's difficult to choose. I mean, each one has its particularities, and yeah.
I don't know.
I don't want to elect anyone.
But that was a surprising thing, wasn't it, Rita, that we had so many lectures about collaboration? Yeah. That wasn't something that I experienced back in 2019. There's 0 papers about collaboration. So it seems like collaboration is like a growing field in terms of guitar research.
And is that collaboration between performers and composers, between music researchers and scientists? Talk a little bit more about the nature of collaborating. Who's collaborating with whom?
Well, I think it's essentially composers and guitarists.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think what is, if we do not mention the first edition of this conference. I think maybe what is most surprising is that there were so many proposals, because in previous guitar conferences there were, I mean, one or two contemporary guitar proposals. Yeah, it's so, I don't know why was it needed a 21st century guitar conference to actually have people submitting proposals. I think that's maybe the most surprising thing.
That is true. It's interesting that that we just had so many. How many applications do we have initially? Like over 200?
I don't remember anymore.
So,
I mean, I also have I have here numbers for the registrations we have so far. Well, actually more than registrations. I have counted 166 people, including our technical director, Michel Lacour. Maybe then Amy can talk about it more. And lecturers, performers, composers, guest speakers, all of that. I do not have the numbers yet for panelists and chairs, but up to now, that's my number.
So it seems that either interest in contemporary guitar research has just increased very much in the last several years, or there just wasn't a place for people to present their research.
Yeah, I think that that's the key, that you have given people. I think that the interest in 21st century guitar has always been there. I mean, we as guitarists, I think, tend to be very forward-thinking people. We tend to come from musical worlds where we're interacting with a lot of different kinds of music and a lot of contemporary kinds of music. And we just needed a platform. And that's what Amy gave all of us in 2019 in Ottawa, which was an amazing event. Just a week-long fire hose that everybody was drinking from. And so now we have the second iteration. And unfortunately, the pandemic has pushed this back 6 months, pushed it online. Talk about, the challenges of putting together a conference online. A lot of people have been doing it. A lot of these, events have said, we got to keep going. Let's do it online. What's been challenging about putting this event online? What do we gain from going online? What do we lose from going online? Talk a bit about the nature of the online conference, your experience as directors, trying to navigate that, and just more about all of the aspects that come with that.
Okay, well, first I want to say that Rita is one of the most amazing people I have ever worked with. She is the most organized person that I think I've ever encountered. So organizing this with her has just been a dream. And there has been challenges, but I think there also are benefits. For example, everyone knows that traveling to a conference is very expensive. And for artists, that's usually a hurdle that it's hard to overcome. Mm-hmm. So having an online conference enabled us to, have a wider group of people involved. And I think that's a very positive thing.
Mm-hmm. I, for one, though, am very disappointed that I won't get that stamp in my passport.
That's true. And I'm looking outside at 5 feet of snow, so I do think of
Oh boy. So it definitely kind of democratizes access. We had a lot of ensemble pieces and performances that were part of this. How has that been challenging going online? Were there any pieces that was just like, this just can't happen? But I know that there are pieces that are happening. So talk a bit about kind of programming performances and how that works in a virtual environment.
Sure. Well, we have a really excellent conductor, Andrew Noseworthy, who right at the beginning took on our large ensemble pieces. Those who were at 2019 may remember that we had a really large ensemble, like over 40 guitarists in
it was epic.
2 sections. So yes, replicating that online was a bit of a challenge because we had performers all over the world. But Andrew did an incredible job organizing it and getting the pieces done and ready. They're small. It's a smaller group than before, but I'm really excited to hear the pieces.
Yeah. And so we're mostly putting things together asynchronously with these performances where people record a part, whether it's with a click track or a timer, and then upload that, and then it gets synthesized and disseminated online. There's nothing going on that's happening synchronously, is there?
No, fortunately, the large ensemble pieces that were submitted you were able to be done asynchronously, as you said. For example, we have another piece by Blake DeGraw, who did another asynchronous piece in 2019 and a similar one for this conference. So I think people may be surprised by how well the pieces that were submitted are suited for the COVID environment. It's funny how artistic practices will just sort of alter slightly based on what's going on in our real lives.
Yeah. I know I have a friend who'd been doing some production work and, said something about, the players are great, but, they're not rehearsing together and the vibe's not there. Is that something that you're apprehensive about, not having that, real-time interaction and pasting things together part by part? Or do you think these pieces are really going to just take shape that way really naturally?
I think they will. I've been able to see some of the duo and large ensemble works, not the large ensemble works, just the duos. But from what I understand from Andrew is the live session that they did record one piece live. Some of the musicians said that it was a relief because after so long of being isolated, they were finally able to make music with other people, even though they all weren't in the same room.
Yeah.
And in terms of the smaller ensembles, there is a lot of collaboration that goes on, even with something that's distantly recorded. Communicating by email or teleconference and making sure that the eventual performance is exactly what everyone wants.
Yeah. What about with the paper sessions, Rita, and a lot of the scientific research end of things? What do we gain by being online that we haven't talked about already in that respect?
I think people who cannot attend the conference presentially, well, they just have to gain. They can listen to everything. I mean, that's a very big plus. But I mean, it's if you're talking about people who would attend the conference and now they will do it online, well, maybe they will end up attending more sessions than they would if they were here, because maybe they would sleep till later, or they would just go out and check Lisbon. And so yeah, I don't know about this, Amy, but some sessions will be available afterwards. Those who wish to have it online, they will. So for some sessions, or for some presentations, you will be able to listen at another time. That's even better.
I was thinking about that the virtual nature of this conference is actually going to make a lot of things just instantly archivable, right? And so we don't have to go through the next steps of like getting things published. It's all just going to be published because of the environment that we're hosting this conference in, right?
Yes.
So
and
that's,
I mean, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, in the previous conference, like you say, sometimes it can be exhausting doing the entire day, then plus concerts at night. And this way you can sort of take it at your own pace. So
yeah, well, and a lot of times I think, events are stacked in like 3 or 4 layers too, where we have to make impossible choices about what event we're going to attend, or like, for, those of us who are involved in the ensemble aspect of things in 2019, we missed most of the paper sessions because we were in rehearsal so much of the time.
Exactly.
And so, this way we can all digest things over a longer period of time and take in more things that way. And so, what do you think the virtual experience of organizing this conference, what's going to carry over to future iterations of the conference? Because you have a 2022 conference set up in Muncie, Indiana, Ball State, and in 2023 in Montreal, I understand too. So this is not the last that we will see the 21st Century Guitar Conference. Hopefully there will be many more. What has the virtual experience convinced for you that will carry over to in-person events later? Everybody's talking about how COVID is changing everything even once the pandemic is over, which hopefully it will be someday. But talk a bit about, how this is changing the way that you're thinking about organizing future conferences.
Honestly, I think there's always going to be a virtual element in every future conference. Prior to COVID, I would usually travel to a conference where I had a paper, and it's honestly in some ways just unsustainable. And I think particularly so for people who are at the early stages of being a student or a researcher. And I like the idea of giving people the option to present by distance, because there's absolutely nothing to lose and so much to gain by widening access to events like this. So I think every iteration will have a virtual aspect to it, but people love getting together as well. So I don't think having that is going to prevent people from attending when they can. So.
Right. I think that the in-person aspect where you're meeting with people and having those conversations over coffee or lunch or libations or whatever are huge draws for this.
Yes.
And so that is probably the most important thing that's lost in the online experience, because it's just not the same. You can do what you can with breakout rooms and all of that, but I think that that person-to-person interaction at a conference is just so important. That's where we build our networks. So let's talk a bit about the keynote lectures and the special guests, which I know are very, very exciting. Our first keynote is going to be with Pascal Criton and Caroline Delume. Talk a bit about this first keynote lecture, Microtunings, Complexity and Variability, a New Sound Map for the Guitar. What can we expect to see there?
Pascal Criton is this is a joint keynote. We have two joint keynotes of composer guitarists. Yeah. So Pascal Criton is the composer, Caroline Delume is the guitarist. And they will be talking about Pascal's works for guitar tuned in 12th and 16th tones. So she has worked a lot with micro tonality, and they will talk about that. And
so these are very, very small intervals that we're talking about here. Okay. Smaller intervals than I've ever worked with, maybe. That's incredibly fascinating on an instrument where equal temperament is just built into it unless you refret.
Yes.
What do you know about how these tones are achieved? Is this a lot of slide playing, or is this reimagining? Is this rebuilding the guitar?
Not totally. I will quote from their abstract so that I see it right. So these are obtained by progressive shifting of identical strings on guitars fretted in half and quarter tones.
Oh, so it's restringing.
Yes.
Okay. Very, very interesting. So that's going to be very, very exciting. Pascal Criton is not a composer who I'm familiar with, so I'm very, very curious to check this presentation out.
I forgot to say. Sorry, I forgot to say that they're both from France, no?
Yes, great. So that's very exciting. And the second keynote that we're looking at as part of this conference, we have Elena Casoli and Maurizio Pizzati. presenting on Pizzati's 7 studies for classical guitar. This is very exciting as well. These are pieces that I've tried to play and can't. So talk a bit about what we're going to hear about from Pizzati and Casoli about these pieces.
So again, just to clarify, as you already said, but Maurizio Pizzati is the composer, Elena Casoli the guitarist, and the title of their presentation, of their keynote, is Largo Teso, the Sette Studi by Maurizio Pizzati. I think Maurizio wants to talk first about what led him to write the piece. At least one study, because he says then he will talk about how he went from one study to the 7 studies. And then he will also talk about the ensemble pieces that departed from the 7 studies. Elena will talk about about her interpretation of the pieces and show the techniques that we were talking about that before we started.
Some wild approaches to, making sound on the guitar.
Yeah, well, this piece I've heard from Pizzati from my PhD years, because Pizzati these studies include multiphonics, and so actually this is one of the techniques they will be probably talking about. I don't know.
Great. So 2 very exciting keynotes talking about some very interesting repertoire as well. We also have the guest lectures. Both of these figures are people who will be no stranger to people who have been involved in much of any type of guitar conference over the past several years. We have Steve Goss and Milton Myrmekides, both from England, giving some fascinating guest lectures. Let's talk about what we're going to hear about from the 2 of them.
Yes, I'll just mention Milton's lecture, because I thought it was really a really fascinating mixture of 2 aspects of guitar, which you wouldn't necessarily expect to see together, using MIDI guitar and Max as a pedagogical tool. And so where it connects to is research done by Jonathan D'Souza, who was our keynote in 2019. And so it has to do with something that may be familiar to many guitarists, which is the development of pattern playing. So you end up sort of playing very similar patterns over the fretboard because of, a variety of motor control and cognitive aspects that are just the nature of guitar playing. And so what Milton may be talking about, and I don't want to, speak for him, but using MIDI guitar and Max to sort of break those patterns and expand one's own playing.
That's very, very cool. I mean, this whole aspect of how do we conceptualize the fretboard? How do we teach players how to crack the fretboard code is incredibly challenging for us as guitarists. As you well know, Amy, this has been a huge focus of your own research. So I'm very, very excited to see what Milton has to say. We all know that Milton is just a genius, really, in the ways that he uses technology to reconceptualize musical concepts. I've talked to students all the time about his smart metronome presentation that he did in Surrey back in 2015 to talk about, just micro timing and how we conceptualize timing and being slave to the metronome, and that groove is something that is not something that we notate on paper. And so I'm very, very excited to hear about what Milton has to say. He's just an incredibly sharp, smart guy with an incredible knack for using technology to explore music. Talk about Steve and what Steve Goss is talking about. I think this may be a reprise lecture that he's given elsewhere, but is probably going to have some developments since. What's he talking about?
I think it will, because he's talking about a piece which will premiere in 2 days, I think.
Oh, very neat.
Mistaken. So definitely. The title is Jerez, Manuel de Falla, Andrés Segovia, and the Politics of Nostalgia. So the piece was commissioned by the University of Melbourne to mark the centenary of Falla's homenaje. Well, I will quote Steve, and he wants to celebrate the guitar's idiosyncratic idiom and cultural pluralism. He rejects Segovia's autocratic and exclusive classical model for the more democratic and inclusive approach implicit in Falla's work. And I think maybe what will be most interesting, or one of the most interesting aspects, will be that the piece is followed by a complete performance of Homenaje. So I think it will be very interesting to that transition might sound very nice.
So he's composed this piece as a prelude to Falla's work. Is that what I'm understanding?
No, I'm not sure he composed the piece as a prelude, but he wishes that Falla's piece is played after the performance of Jerez. Yes.
So there's the intentional programming pairing that he is, expecting performers to do when they perform his work, that it would be performed alongside the Defia. Yes.
I suppose players, I suppose he had in mind, the piece and how to do that transition. I'm guessing.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we'll find out more when he gives his presentation. Now, Amy, let's just talk a little bit about the future of the 21st Century Guitar Conference. I know that you're still in the home stretch of finalizing everything for this iteration, but is there any sort of focus or emphasis that we can expect to hear about with the Ball State Conference or the Montreal Conference? Just to kind of get everybody's gears turning in their heads about what might my paper proposal be for 2022 or 2023. What are we looking at?
Well, for 2022, as you mentioned, it's going to be at Ball State University in Indiana, and the co-host is a wonderful composer named Amelia Kaplan. She wrote one of the pieces for the large ensembles back in 2019. And the theme for 2022 is the guitar in contemporary chamber music. And I'm particularly excited about that because, I started doing some research on potential pieces, and there's just a vast amount of contemporary chamber music that includes the guitar, in particular the electric guitar. So I feel like there is going to be a large number of very interesting performances in person. Can you imagine?
Let's hope. Yes.
And we're also, this isn't confirmed yet, but we're also in discussions about having some pieces for guitar and orchestra. So that will definitely be a new twist on things that we've had at previous events. So.
Very, very cool. I think that is going to be an excellent follow-up to this conference, since we're all dying to play music together again. And I think that one thing that has been really important for me in guitar is cross collaboration with other instruments. It's so easy for us to get stuck in our own little guitar ghetto. And so I think it's really exciting that we're going to have a conference that's devoted to chamber music, where we might be interfacing with other instrumentalists as well as just guitarists. So that's incredibly exciting.
I was just going to say, one of the things I wanted to mention about this particular iteration is we have also a number of non-guitarist presenters. For example, Samantha Muir is going to be presenting her work with ukulele. So there is an interesting expansion on what it means to play, like what is in a guitar conference. So.
Yeah, I know there have been years that I've made more money performing on banjo than I've made money performing on guitar. And so we have to do all kinds of different things.
Yeah. I would also like to add that, and to thank my research center, because they're our main supporters. So this is the Center for the Study of the Sociology and Aesthetics of Music of the Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities of Universidade Nova de Lisboa. And yes, their support is essential for this. And also, of course, to thank Amy, because without her, this would not be possible, of course.
Yeah.
And if I were alone to organize something like this, there would not be so much happening.
Yes. Well, for those of us who are in Ottawa, we know that Amy lives by the mantra "Go big or go home," and she just goes big. So, well, thank you both for sitting down and talking today. It's going to be a very exciting conference. I hope that we'll all be able to tune in as much as possible and access stuff after the fact when we can. And good luck with all of the future organization and preparation that goes into this huge undertaking.
Yes, and I just want to say for anyone who's interested in tuning in, it's going to be streaming live on our Facebook page and also on our website at 21cguitar.com.
Excellent. Thank you both so much.
Thank you, Trevor.